Yeah, and whoever is the host, I need to get the screen sharing rights back.
I'm just doing it. Give me a minute.
Yeah. I think something happened, but I will just continue. So those of you who are here, you don't lose out on time. So we connect to a particular image. And that image can be either male or female, it doesn't matter, but we intuitively connect to a certain image. So if I say hero, I know exactly what a hero thinks, does, and behaves. And this is proven in all the stories that we have heard. When I say heroine, interestingly, that's why I showed you the pictures. When I say typical heroine or a princess, we have certain ideas and images of that particular person. Like I said, if I say nurturer, usually I would think of a woman. So archetypes exert forces that are deep in our subconscious and we may not even be aware of it. But as an energy, I would say yes. As an energy, the archetype is gender neutral. But because of conditioning, because the way we have all grown up listening to stories, because of all the messaging that we get, we do associate a gender with archetypes. So when you look at the work that has been done in archetypes, and I will share that with you, a lot of work was initially done by Carl Jung. Right? So he was the one who wrote a lot about archetypes, and most of the research was done on men. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's how archetypes evolved, because in those days when Jung started his work, women were really not in the mainstream and they were not even considered to be an audience. So if you look at the core archetypes, they are gender neutral: creator, caregiver, explorer. But intuitively, you will have an image of what an outlaw looks like. A ruler. A ruler is usually male, right? And the words we use, magician, outlaw, regular, ruler, are fairly, and I'd say it's supposed to be gender neutral, but it's like saying chairman, right? It's usually a male figure that we associate with. And as I was doing leadership development work, one of the books I came across was this book by Moore and Gillette called King, Warrior, Magician, Love. And if you look at the images, they're all male, right? So, and there's nothing wrong with it. I think, as I said, archetypes can be gender neutral. But I found when I was doing the work with women, me and other women, we couldn't immediately relate and connect to king, warrior, magician, lover. They didn't speak to me at a deeper level. And if you say, are you a king? It didn't rest well with me. So when I started exploring the world of archetypes and I started doing a lot of work with women, when I was doing DNI work, and it was for me a thought that why not take the same thinking of archetypes, but see whether I can give it a female as well as Asian and specifically Indian lens, because most of my work was with women in India. And interestingly, after this came out, a lot of men came up to me and said, please do one for Indian men as well. So the work archetypes are gender agnostic. Many of them have a Western male lens, if you'll see from the names, but there is a lot of work which is done with feminine archetypes in the West. There's a very interesting book by Jean Shinoda Bolen, which she calls it Goddess in Every Woman, and she uses Greek goddesses like Athena and Venus. But I said, I haven't grown up with an Athena and Venus. I've grown up more with Lakshmi, Saraswati, and our own Indian goddesses. So why not take the archetypal thinking and see whether it can be something that I can use for women. So when I started doing my research, I started speaking to a lot of women, and since we have a large population, I found enough women to have conversations with, and this is what I also heard, that king, magician, lover, or even jester doesn't really resonate and sit with me. And I found we are still under the influence of the stories that we've grown up with for generations, especially the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. Right? So if I tell you Sita, you have an archetype. If I tell you hero, you know who this is. So this is the reason why I wanted to bring a lens. So it's my really coming from my experience and my need to say, can I bring a more female lens to this? Especially since I work with the corporates and I know the world of work has been designed by men for men. Just 2 days ago, I did a leadership development program for women. I mean, when they looked at the archetypes, they said, yeah, we can connect to this. So that's what I wanted to get. Wanted to get resonance, provide a language as well. Because there's one thing that archetypes do very well is provide a language, right? So you can use it to enhance self-awareness, leverage strength, overcome your limiting beliefs, support your personal growth, and of course, provide a language. It's very easy to say, for example, today I need to be a hero. Today I want, I'm evoking the jester in me. So that is why I said we'll use archetypes, but yet can I give a language that connects to women, that is more female, because we want something that speaks to us. So pretty much for the same reason, why there are different clothes or different products for men and women. It's not that you can't use it. And now we're moving beyond just binary genders, but anybody who identifies, I would say not just a cisgender woman, anybody who identifies as female and has grown up with messaging directed towards females will find resonance in this model. So that's really why this came about. And it was, honestly, it's an experiment. And I said, let me do the book and see what comes out of it. And there was great connection when I workshopped the book and I spoke about it to a lot of women. Then the first question anybody would ask is, what do you think is my power? And I use the word power very intentionally instead of archetype or energy, because the whole idea is how can we tap into the power we have and move from being powerless to powerful. So that is why I call it 6 feminine powers. And so here's the model. Detailed it in my book. And these words, I mean, there's no real research. It just came to me. So I said, when I started doing the research, I said, of course, there are 4 core models like king, warrior, magician, lover. But I got to see that there were 6 distinct energies. Now, if you come up with a 7th one or an 8th one, that's perfectly okay. Some of the energies go well together. But I saw that these were the 6 archetypes, what I call Kanya, which is a good girl energy, the Apsara or the beauty, the influencer, the expressor energy, the mother archetype, the nurturing caregiver, the Rani, which is the noble queen archetype, Rishika, the seeker, and Veera, the rebel warrior. So the descriptions are only one facet of this power, but it's really to have an idea as to how can I relate to this. Okay, so I see there's a question, Neha.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Nirupa, I'm loving this, and I followed your work at Glow as well. So hope to read this book too sometime. So
Thank you.
My question is, do archetypes or are archetypes necessarily positive? So I can think of, say, a vamp archetype or something. I mean,
Yes, you are absolutely right. So I will say each archetype has a positive side and a darker side.
Okay.
So the vamp archetype is the darker side of, I would say, the Apsara archetype. So I'm going to come to that, which will help us understand that better. So every archetype, if you use it well and you draw on its strength, becomes a source of energy and power. Not having access to a power or overdoing any one leads to the darker side of that archetype. And unfortunately, many of the stereotypes we have come from the darker side of an archetype rather than the positive side. So in fact, when I was discussing this, what the blurb of my book says that changing the conversation from how these stereotypes shackle women to how they can enable them. So that's really the narrative that I wanted to shift and not see these as negative archetypes. So I'm going to very briefly go through each of these 6, so then you'll be able to understand.
Thank you.
So now I want to link it to coaching. So how do we coach? It's not just with archetypes, with anything, really through a process of awareness, exploration, getting the person to understand themselves well. And then there is a process of alignment, which is from awareness, how do I make the choice to shift based on my context, my needs, my environment and surroundings, right? That's what I call the alignment process. And then we actually move to action. So you can't jump from just, hey, I'm aware of archetypes, let me do something. We really want to connect it to our situation and context. So the first step, awareness, then alignment, and then action. So this is the process we also follow in coaching with archetypes. So I'll start with awareness. Yeah, Mahi?
I have a question. So can I use this particular assessment with one of my connects who is from LGBT or queer, whatever you want to call?
I would
So,
love to see, yeah. I mean, honestly, I would love to see how that pans. So this is for, I would say, men have taken this as well.
hmm,
And they've been able to connect to it energetically. And even though the words may not actually speak, like I may not see myself as an Apsara, but the behaviors are something that I can connect to. Like somebody told me, oh, Shashi Tharoor is an Apsara. Or, I can make out that this is the essence. Or one of
so
my men identified himself as a monk, right? So I would love to see, and I'd say this is for anybody who identifies as a woman. So,
yes,
a
yes.
trans woman, if you're non-binary and you're still identifying, you can. And I would like, if you would, I would love for anybody from who identifies with any gender or any sexual orientation to take this, because the
Mhm.
questions are gender neutral. And the
Right.
report is also gender, neutral in the sense the languaging is gender neutral. So, if you have somebody to take it, I will be very, very happy to see.
I
Yeah.
have somebody already. So
Okay.
he's a man, although, but resembles like he's a female.
Presence as a woman. Yeah,
Ah,
absolutely.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
Mahid, please let me know what it is. So I'm going to share the descriptors very briefly of each one of them. That
Sure.
will help us to understand each of the archetypes. And your power profile will give you this to some extent, but this is just to let us know. Right? So this is what we will get from the assessment. When you take it, you get your power profile, which is basically how you score across each of the archetypes. Right? So let me go through each and then we can go into a deeper analysis of the profile. So for example, the Kanya. So the Kanya is really the young, optimistic, cheerful, pleasant, adaptable, ethical, nice girl, right? We all know this girl, and in the book I give a lot of examples of this. Um, the needs of a Kanya are acceptance, validation. She wants pleasant, happiness. She's approachable. But with every archetypal energy, there is a fear. There's a fear of rejection, fear of being dismissed, a fear of not being accepted. And in the face of fear, we tend to display the darker side of an archetype. So the Kanya becomes submissive, people pleaser, gullible, what you call a whim. She, maybe becomes a doormat and lets people walk all over her because she fears she will not get acceptance. So Neha, to the question that you asked, yes, sometimes the stereotype of a Kanya is goody goody. So somebody told me, oh, she's too goody goody. And I don't want to be like that. But it's actually a source of power. And sometimes we can display the negative pole. So in archetypal language, this is called the negative pole. Right? There's a positive pole and there's a negative pole. And for each archetype, too much of the displaying only that energy, not displaying that energy at all, both can be dysfunctional. If I'm always living only in the Kanya, that may not be helpful for me. If I'm always in the dark side of the Kanya, that's not helpful for me as well. So
Mm.
this is the way, and I'm just going to give you a brief overview because this can be really deep. Right? When you look at shadows, you will explore that and understand why this is there. That's where the coach comes in. So I'm just going to walk through the 6 and then I'll take any specific questions. So that's the Kanya.
Nirupama, one more thing, if you could share specific examples along with some of
Yeah.
them, because honestly, when you talk about Kanya, nobody's coming to my mind.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So the
Can
examples I will draw from are, of course, mythology and popular culture. So, but again, I want to say that nobody is only one archetype. We all have a mix. We might present as one. So if you look at even the profile, you will say, this is mine. I am a core Rishika, but I also have Kanya, Veera, Apsara, and Ma to some extent. So if I were to give you just a presenting persona of how an Kanya could show up, the examples I've used are from Bollywood, like an actress, if you heard Juhi Chawla. Right? So presents as very bubbly, nice, girl next door, usually gets roles like that as well. People don't see her as a vamp or a villain. It's a big stretch to adapt to that. Right? Or if you look at certain aspects of Sita from the Ramayana is a Kanya. Right? She's adaptable, she's ethical, she stays true to her values. She's optimistic. So, but I'm not going to say Sita is a core Kanya because she has other powers as well. But typically look at somebody with a girlish energy, the person in your friend group who's always fun, who enjoys, who people like, generally seen as a nice girl. That's the Kanya. We'll come to the Veera. So we'll go through all this, and I would love for you to share some examples after that. The Veera is the warrior energy. Now, women do have the warrior energy, as all of us have seen and experienced. The Veeras are brave, bold, risk takers, goal oriented, they are fighters, and their core needs are really success, achievement, and results. And the fears are fear of losing. An extreme or the dark side of the Veera is the aggressive, reckless, dominating woman in rage. And again, this is where the distinction is there between the male warrior archetype and the female. The male warrior archetype has got a lot of social sanction and validation. Boys are told you must fight. The hero is the one who does the fighting. Whereas the Veera doesn't have that much of social sanction and conditioning. So a lot of young girls grow up by and are told, don't be bossy, don't raise your voice, don't fight, accept. And women have not been validated for being rebellious or warriors. In fact, in all the stories, like if you take a Ramayan, Kaikeyi is a Veera. She fought, but nobody sees that aspect of her. We see her as a very willful, angry,
Vampish.
selfish woman. But we forget to see that she speaks up, she's ambitious, she asks for what she wants, she takes risks, pays a price for it. And these are the positive sides of the Veera. And I see a lot of women at the workplace who have a strong Veera, but because of conditioning, we are told you are too aggressive, you're too bossy, we try to tone it down. The same behavior, there's plenty of research which shows that which is seen as assertive in men is seen as too aggressive or too ambitious in women. So which is why I wanted to bring the female lens so that we want to understand where this comes from, the cultural context and the conditioning. Women were not allowed to have combat roles in the Indian army as well, right? So we've actually told that this is not what you are supposed to be doing. And women themselves look down or are a little scared of women who come across as too dominating, reckless, bold, and ambitious. Because the Teta strategy has told you if you do any of this, you will get punished. So that's the Veera. Then there is the Apsara, which is one of my favorites because interestingly, across the research database of 2,500 women, this uniformly scores low. The Apsara is the seductive beauty, but also the expressive influencer. So this is the other way of looking at it. And we all know the Apsara, charming, expressive, very influential. This is the woman who fully shows up as who she is. She wants admiration, attention. She's comfortable with the spotlight. She's not too worried about what people are going to say and think about her. And this is the Apsara in her full glory. But her core fear is, of course, being suppressed, being ignored, not given attention. And you'll see this in little girls who throw a tantrum because they're not getting the attention that they want. And Apsara is all about connecting to your own beauty, being comfortable with your body, your sensuality. And again, the cultural context is a lot of this has been suppressed. The messaging that we have got for centuries is that this aspect of a woman is dangerous. So the Apsaras were sent to seduce the saints. So they were not the good girls. So the darker side of the Apsaras, what we see is the vamp, right? She has no morals, she's loose, she does what she wants, she doesn't care about other people. And this has been seen as undesirable to such an extent that we don't own the positive sides of the Apsara, which is being fully self-expressive, being totally comfortable with who you are, doing what you want, when you want. And women were traditionally not ever supposed to do that. But we need this for a lot of things that we need to do at the workplace, and I'll come to that. Then there's the Rani. This is the queen energy. Different from the warrior energy. The warrior energy goes like this. The queen energy is about being stable, structured, organized. If you look at an example, and I've read Indra Nui's autobiography, very much a Rani, right? Deep drive for excellence, perfection, attention to details, always prepares, very structured. This is the person you can see has got lists, she's got spreadsheets, her home runs very well, her work runs very well. So an extremely powerful person who brings order to chaos, who will be able to take something which is messy and make it structured, organized, and stable, but at the same time, fears losing control and fears chaos. So the dark side of the Rani shows up as very rigid, very perfectionistic, very worried that things will go wrong and perpetually anxious as well. So that's the darker side. So we might see her, that stereotype of the Rani is this control freak, right? But she's actually has a very, very strong capabilities and competencies. Then there's the Ma, we know the Ma. The stereotype image of a Ma, if you look at and ask people this, what is a typical mother? Anybody can answer or go into the chat box. And you say mother, what are the typical mother behaviors?
Nirupa Roy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you won't believe, there's so many times this comes up. So that's the power of archetypes, right?
Yes.
Nirupama and I is so deeply entrenched in our psyche as that typical mother who, always self-sacrificing, will eat last, will do everything for her children, keep them on the straight path, but will be rescued, right? At the end, the Ma is tied up by the villain and the hero son comes to rescue her.
So
Right?
I'm actually watching Bollywood through all these slides. The previous one, Shivagami. Before that was Hindu.
Yes, yes. You look at any movie, you will see these archetypes. And in my book, I've used a lot of Bollywood examples because they're still alive in popular culture. What keeps archetypes alive is popular culture and stories, right? And now the medium of storytelling is movies. So it's very interesting. And I've seen, how there are transitions also, how transformation happens in the movie. And that's really, you're talking about Campbell's hero's journey is really about stages of transformation. And that's what archetypes will help us to do. Again, that's the stereotype of a Ma, but the Ma energy is really needed, irrespective of whether you're a biological mother or not, helpful, generous, empathetic, very nurturing, patient. And in archetypal language, these behaviors are never been associated with the male. Even in Jungian archetypes, if you see the image of caregiver or nurturer, it's always a woman. So men, unfortunately, don't have an archetype of nurturer or caregiver to live up to. Unlike the mother, the father, if you know from any culture you go in the world, the father is usually distant, strict, absent. He's the provider and protector and never the nurturer. So it's very difficult, therefore, and I've seen this in my coaching, for men to actively tap into this energy, even though they say we want to be empathetic, compassionate, and nurturing. We don't have a very powerful archetypal example to live up to. Dark side of the Ma, suffering, sacrificing, bit of a martyr. Right? So that's the Ma. The last one is the Rishika, who's the seeker, the wise woman. Wise woman has always been a part of many cultures, and we have women like Mirabai or Akka Mahadevi or Avayar in the south. These are women who are intelligent, knowledgeable. So in the modern world, you could go the scientific way or the spiritual way, but really what you want is knowledge, seeking, connection to a greater purpose. You want mastery, you want to be right. Or even in popular culture, if you know Harry Potter, Hermione, who has the answer to everything. So this is the wise woman energy. And invariably, we associate it with an older woman, right? So when I was starting off doing training and coaching, I was in my late 20s, and I had a confidence issue because I felt because I was young and a woman, I'm not going to be taken seriously. To be taken seriously, typically you need to have some white hair and many years behind you. Right? So we automatically associate age with wisdom, but that is not necessarily so. If you've seen the movie Lipstick Under My Burqa, you know that you can still be an Apsara even if you are much older and you have white hair. It has nothing to do with age, but it's really your energy. So this is the Rishika. The Rishika's darker side is she becomes very detached. Invariably, she believes she has to leave the world and be alone to truly live her Rishika power. So it's difficult for the Rishika to integrate emotions with intellect, and sometimes she can be seen as detached. So these are the 6 powers. So I'm just keeping track of time, and I'll just go through how do we use it, and then we'll open up for questions. So the other thing is, so what blocks your power? How do we use it? You need to understand what could be blocking your power, and that's the shadow. And there's a whole lot of work done in the shadow area, and I speak about it in my book, but a very easy way of connecting to a power which is low and understanding it fully is to connect to your shadow. So if I say, oh, I can't be so needy, I don't like these weak, clingy women, or I don't like these bossy, aggressive women, it probably connects to my shadow, and my power for that archetype will be lower. Okay. So how do we use it for coaching? Now I want to come to coaching and give some examples. So I would say awareness, alignment, and action. So it's very important to understand your client's goals, context, and challenges. So we interpret the profile in the context, right? So then you help the client identify what are my dominant powers, which is really in the tool, what have I scored highly? What do I associate with? What do I keep using? What are power blocks and shadows? And then how do I move to action? So I'm going to give you some concrete examples as well with this. So I've been using it for coaching in the past 2 years, and I find it gives me very easy access to something which can be very deep and not easy to access through a simple conversation. So if I want to make the connection, let's say your client has problems speaking up or taking risks, then you say, okay, and she has a low Vera score. This is the power she needs to evoke. And for a lot of women, they want influencing and networking, then I need to evoke an Apsara. So by identifying what are the challenges or what are my goals, I can relate the power that needs to be evoked. Again, I want to say all of us have all powers. Some are dominant, we use it more often. Some we use less often. There is no good profile or bad profile. All powers are positive unless it becomes or until it becomes a power block, until I do too much of it. How do I move to action? I give 3 access points. One is through positive affirmations, which is really rewiring and changing the mind. And I'll give you examples for how these work. Body work. So I don't know if any of you do yoga or have a body practice. You know, there's a lot of wisdom in the body. And if I want to shift something in the mind, one axis is to shift something in the body. So I can take body practices which give me a warrior energy, which is like one of the things I did was take up running, which is very goal oriented. You do it, you meet a goal. That's a body practice. Or if I want to evoke the Apsara energy, one of my friends took up, salsa and bachata, which are very sensuous partner dances with which she could evoke her Apsara energy, and intentional actions. So I'll give you a case and I'll invite all of you to, take a minute to read the case. So if we are coaching people and, you have a context, you can also back with the profile, you can immediately understand. So just take a minute to read what is Reena's dominant power, what is happening, and what would she need to do. And any one of you can unmute and tell me, what do you think is Reena's dominant power? She's pleasant, approachable, builds rapport.
Anya, right?
Yes, Neha, yeah. So here Reena is presenting as a Kanya. And how do you know this? Because pleasant, approachable, stays in the background, wants her team to really like her. And her strong shadow, she doesn't want to be a pushy, brazen person who no one likes. So strong need for validation, acceptance, not only from her boss, from her team members. So what could be a power block for her or her limiting belief? Any idea?
Probably to take the center stage, because she has always been behind the curtain. So like taking that stage and displaying the assertive side also.
Exactly. Right? Her need to be like, yeah, that I will be liked and accepted only if I stay in the background. Or if I show up and take the spotlight, people will not like me or approve of me. That's not the right behavior. And she has a strong shadow as well of pushy, brazen women. And she probably will not even realize that she's doing something that is self-sabotaging. So a limiting belief or a power block actually becomes a leads to a self-sabotaging behavior. And so what she would need to evoke in this situation, you'd say, which is the power she would need to tap into?
The warrior?
Warrior.
Yeah, probably a combination of the warrior, the Veera, and the Apsara. Right? So Apsara is taking the spotlight, talking about my achievements, showcasing what I have done. So she really needs to tap into her Veera and Apsara. Right? So this is the way you can actually have a conversation and help people understand what's going on. And I'll share with you 2 real case studies of how I have used this. So this client's goal was, and she got the feedback that she needs to speak up more. She was a professional services firm. She's a young woman, but for her to be successful, she needed to speak up. And she was really struggling with that. She got feedback that she needs to step up leadership presence. Of course, when we took her power profile, we found she was a very high Kanya. And her power block was, I will not be accepted or liked if I speak up. And because I'm a young woman, she herself assumed, and she presented also as very young. She was in her early 30s, but she looked much younger. Take me seriously. She'd already made up her mind that people are not going to take me seriously, so I better keep quiet, and at least that way I'll get acceptance and liking. So we actually found that the power she needed to evoke was the intelligent, wise woman, right? And that was a low score. She had some moderate Veera, but interestingly, during the conversation, she said, if I prepare well, being taken seriously, mature, these were the words that showed up. So her affirmation was, my knowledge and preparation and being a subject matter expert, in fact, will give me confidence. And what she decided to do was prepare well, work on her presence of having more gravitas, which is not necessarily change. Sometimes women need to dress down or change her look. In her case, she said, I will prepare well. I will put across whatever I have to say. I will back it up with data and facts. So getting deep, learning more, developing expertise was what she needed to do, and she needed to evoke her Rishika to be able to do that. So I worked with her to see what are some of the things that you can do, which included a lot more time for preparation. She would never prepare for the meeting because of these mind blocks in any case. A, I'm not going to speak up. B, even if I speak up, I'm not going to be taken seriously. So since I'm not going to have anything to say, I'm not going to prepare for these meetings. And obviously she didn't speak up, and it became a vicious cycle. So to break that, and I said, intentional action is go and do this, right? So prepare, and next meeting, you have to put your words across. We did a little practice as to how she could communicate, and this helped her. So I found with the profile, you have immediate access to what is the block and what you need to evoke. And I'll share another one where this was a senior woman, and she was in a very male dominated corporate setup where obviously she became successful because she was the Veera. She had to adapt to being a man in a man's world. She was known for being aggressive, ambitious, bold. But at a senior level, she'd reached a plateau. She started getting scores. Her employee engagement scores were not that high. And of course, she was a very high Veera. She worked on the fact that I have to drive people hard or I will fail, fear of failure. She herself had struggled a lot in life. So she really presented as the Veera most of the time. But for her to get to the next level, we found that she needed to work with the Ma, which is more deep listening, connecting with people, have one-on-one, have a different affirmation and a mindset of, if I will win, if my people win. So the specific action she started doing was having more one-on-one sessions, which would not be about only goals and tasks. So this was a way in which she was able to evoke her Ma energy without diminishing her Veera energy. She continued to be that, but still in these situations, in this way, I can be more of a nurturer and nurture my team. Okay, Neera, you have a question?
Yes, Nirupama. The question
Yeah.
that's in my mind is a person going to have a certain dominant archetype and stay with it lifelong? Or would you see some kind of changes happen along the way in the journey of a person's existence?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in a few years, I'll have data for about 5 years where we can go back and see. But what I've seen in working with, hundreds of women is that your dominant powers don't usually change with time, unless there is a significant life change, or over a period of time, you have consciously worked to shift it. So I can say I was always a Rishika and Kanya, even as a young girl. But the scores might go up or down, but the overall profile will not significantly change. It can change in the short term if you've had all moderate scores and maybe one pops up a little bit, but you're not going to see a significant shift in the short term. We'll probably need at least 2 years of consciously working on it, or going through a huge life change. Like one of my clients said, I used to be a Kanya, but after her divorce, where she had a very abusive relationship, she went through a lot in that. She said, now I have emerged a Veera. And she looked at it and said, my Kanya is lower than my Veera. It wouldn't have been the same 6-7 years ago. So yes, it can only shift. Archetypal energies only shift because of life changes or conscious effort, not like
What
that.
I'm hearing is that the balance can shift along
Yeah.
the way based on how we continue to evolve or deal with the
Yeah.
external environment.
Yes, exactly. But my overall dominant powers and the way my identity as one of that usually does not change.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Great. So we are pretty much towards the end, and I'll just go through a couple of slides and then open up for questions. So I just wanted to share that now we are using this as a tool for coaching. So last year we did a certification program, and these are our coaches who are all already, you can say, ICF certified coaches, but we go through a Powerful Life certification program, and then all of them are now using the tool in their coaching. We've taken some significant leadership journeys with organizations where they've liked the tool so much that it's become a part of women leadership journeys, and also use it in one-on-one coaching. I do a lot of group coaching as well, where people don't want to get one-on-one coaching, but everybody takes their profile and we give them a way to debrief it and understand it and work with it. So that's the way the profile works. And I want to say it's really about tapping into archetypes, using it as one of the tools, one of the pathways to understand our own power and potential, overcome the power blocks that come in the way as well. Okay, now we'll just, I guess we are at time, so I'll open up for questions. Feel free to reach out to me. Here are the social media handles. Ruchika, you can put them in the chat as well. And yeah, thank you for all the questions, for being here, for being patient and listening. And I'm here for any more questions if anybody would like to ask, and do put in your feedback in the chat box as well, so that we will understand. Mahi, yes.
My question is, if there could be some situations where your dominant type is not being practiced, okay, or there are some situations that it is put to be a little submissive. In that situation, what would happen?
So again, Mahi, so you might not be using your dominant power all the time. Absolutely, right? And
Okay.
I would say you don't need to use it all the time.
Mhm.
Right? So it depends. Again, that's why the alignment part is important. I'll give you my own example. So I'm a co-Rishika, and my Rishika energy helps me to do the research and write a book. I'm very, very happy to do that. But
Mhm.
my Apsara energy is quite low. So it's not easy for me to do marketing or promotion, or let's say get the word around, or talk a lot and do what I call selling. So if I only use my Rishika energy, I'm not going to be successful in achieving the goal or the purpose that I want, which is to enable women to live their full power and potential. So in the context of living my purpose, I need to adapt to another power as well, which is, in this case, let's say, how do I tap into my Apsara, or how do I tap into my Veera and become more goal-oriented, and harness those powers along with my Rishika. So I do want to tap into my dominant powers, but I don't want to stay only being a Rishika at all times. So the key for me to understand what I need to do is to look at goals and challenges. What am I struggling with right now? Is my dominant power actually coming in the way of what I'm doing? Or here is my goal. This is what I want to achieve. And to achieve this goal, I need to use powers other than my dominant powers.
Okay. So, Nirupama, let me go through my report.
Yeah.
I'm not taking the assessment yet. So probably I would connect in person with you
Sure.
and explain what I've been talking about.
Yeah.
So because I am able to relate to few of the archetypes of women, but still, let me take that and I'll speak with you.
Sure, absolutely. And I think it makes sense
Sure.
only if you take the assessment and
Yes,
test it to
yes.
your life. And, the way I developed this was first connecting it to my life and seeing whether this was true for me. Am I really a Rishika? So I took the assessment 4 times. And this is a validated psychometric assessment. So it's not just me who's developed it. I worked with a psychometrician. He runs an organization where they've developed many psychometric tools. So it's gone through validity and reliability tests. It's gone through statistical analysis. So we can be sure that the questions which we are using and the answers that we get have a high degree of reliability and validity. So the initial research was done on 450 women from South Asia. And on that basis, we created the final tool. So it's not like it's not a simple BuzzFeed quiz. It's a validated, researched instrument.
Sure. Thanks. Now, I was supposed to ask about the reliability and validity and also the norm size. So you answered all of them. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining. And I have put across the link of the social media handles in the chat. Along with the tools link, you can take the tool and can download the report. So there are 3 different models. So you can pick up whichever works for you. And we'll share the recording on YouTube. So I think you can check the link there. Keep a tab on the Abhyudaya's YouTube channel. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining. And I hope we kind of leverage our own archetype in whatever intervention we do in our life. So all the best. Thank you, Nirupama. Can you stop the recording and share with me later? Thank you.
Okay. Am I recording it?
Yes, you are the host and you have to stop the recording so that it can be. Thank you.
Thank you.